All right, so get this. We're diving into one wild night of NBA action. 5 games, 5 totally different stories. But could there be like a bigger picture here? Something shifting in the league. That's what we're going to try to figure out.
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely some surprises, some amazing individual performances,
Yeah,
even some hints about, what we might see in the playoffs.
for sure. Let's start off in OKC. On the surface, the Warriors winning 116-109 over the Thunder. Doesn't sound crazy, right? But hold on.
Yeah, the interesting thing is the Thunder, they kind of exposed some weaknesses in how the Warriors play. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man, he was unstoppable, just attacking the basket over and over. And the Warriors' experience, their age, which is usually a plus, it almost seemed like a disadvantage against this young, super energetic Thunder team.
Totally. I was watching Gilgeous-Alexander just weaving through their defense and thinking, are the Warriors finally slowing down? But then, classic Steph Curry, right?
Oh, yeah. Curry, he's not just a shooter. He knows how to totally mess with defenses. He draws so much attention that it creates opportunities for everyone else. And when it's crunch time, everyone's focused on him, and boom, space opens up for that game-winning shot.
And Jordy Poole coming off the bench. He gave them that energy boost right when they needed it.
Poole getting better is huge for the Warriors going forward. Take some of that scoring pressure off Curry and Thompson. And his playmaking, it just adds a whole other layer to their offense.
So bottom line, are the Warriors still contenders?
They're definitely in the mix. But this game, it showed us they're not unbeatable. Teams can challenge them. They got to adapt to stay on top.
Okay, now for a game that really shook things up, Timberwolves beating the Suns, 121-113. Total upset.
This wasn't just an upset. It was a statement about how powerful the Timberwolves offense can be. Edwards and Towns, 65 points combined. And they weren't just chucking up shots. They were smart. They found each other. They totally took apart the Suns' defense.
What I noticed was their confidence. They weren't scared of the Suns' reputation at all. They played their game, and they played it perfectly.
And it revealed some problems for the Suns. Their defense, which is usually so good, looked shaky. Booker and Paul, yeah, they scored, but it wasn't that same dominance we're used to seeing.
So, does this mean the Suns are done? Are they falling apart?
Way too early to say that. But this game definitely showed us they can be beat. They need to get that defensive edge back and find that flow that made them so dangerous last season.
Next up, we're going to Los Angeles. The Clippers just crushed the Spurs, 128-116.
This was a clinic on execution from the Clippers. Leonard and George, they were on another level, hitting shots from everywhere, shutting down the Spurs on defense.
Leonard's mid-range game, man, it's like poetry. So smooth, even with guys all over him.
It's not just about individual talent, though. The Clippers moved the ball so well, always found the open man, played with this intensity the Spurs just couldn't match.
It felt like they were sending a message, we're here to win it all.
I think that's a fair take. They've got the stars, the depth, the coaching. They're a real contender.
Okay, hold on tight, because we're about to relive a thriller. Mavericks against the Pelicans. It came down to 1 point, 137-136. Mavericks win.
This game was just pure basketball joy. Back and forth, bucket for bucket, neither team giving an inch. And in the end, it was all about Luka Doncic, as usual.
Doncic was amazing. 45 points, 12 assists, hits the game-winning shot like it's nothing. Ice in his veins.
It's not even just the stats, it's how he affects every part of the game. He controls the pace, finds passes no one else sees, and when the pressure's on, he comes through.
Williamson and Ingram, they had a good game for the Pelicans, but Doncic just stole the show.
Yeah, they combined for 58 points. But they needed a little more help from their teammates. Against a team like the Mavericks, with Doncic running things, you can't afford any mistakes.
All right, last but not least, we got the Knicks dominating the Nuggets, 122-112. Are the Knicks finally becoming a force in the East?
They're playing like it. Randall, he was a monster. 32 points, 12 rebounds. But what really stood out was their teamwork. They shared the ball, played amazing defense. Everyone did their part.
It felt like a different Knicks team. Confident, aggressive, like they actually believed they could beat anyone.
The Nuggets, they seemed a little off. Jokic and Murray had some good moments, but they couldn't really control the game.
So 5 games, 5 different stories. But is there a bigger trend here? Are we seeing a shift in power? More balance across the league?
That's the question, right? We got young teams like the Timberwolves making a statement, established stars like Doncic dominating, and then teams like the Knicks coming out of nowhere. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out as the season goes on.
We'll be back in a bit to break down even more of what happened in this incredible night of NBA games.
So we're back, still diving into all the action from last night. And before the break, we were talking about, the possibility of the power shifting in the league. And I think the Knicks, what they did against the Nuggets, that really highlights that idea.
Yeah, the Knicks, it was like everything was working for them. They were attacking on offense, really disciplined on defense, and they had this swagger. Haven't seen that from them in a long time.
It's wild how a team's whole mentality can change like that. I mean, the Knicks, for years, they've been all over the place. No consistency, no clear direction. But now with Thibodeau coaching, they seem to have found something, like an identity. They know what they're about.
And Julius Randle, man, his development has been something else. He's not just a scorer anymore. He's a leader. He makes plays for his teammates. He affects the game in so many ways.
He's become like the core of that Knicks team. He sets the tone with how hard he plays, his work ethic, and he really believes in his teammates.
And speaking of belief, let's go back to that Mavericks-Pelicans game for a sec. Luka Doncic, that game-winning shot, it wasn't just skill. You could see the confidence, like he knew he was going to make it.
Doncic, what's impressive is he's not afraid of those big moments. He actually seems to love the pressure, the challenge, and he just keeps delivering when it matters most.
It's like he's got that Mamba mentality, that killer instinct that separates the good players from the greats.
It's not just talent, though, right? It's mindset. Doncic, he has this unshakable belief in himself. That's what lets him make those crazy plays when the game's on the line.
And you saw that same confidence with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns when the Timberwolves beat the Suns. They weren't intimidated by the Suns at all, even with all their stars and their championship history. They just went out and played their game.
That fearlessness, that willingness to go after the top teams, that's what makes this Timberwolves team so exciting. They're not afraid to take chances, they're not afraid to mess up, and they play with so much joy, it's contagious.
Like they're saying, we're here, we're hungry, and we're not backing down from anyone.
And that's the beauty of the NBA, man. Anything can happen. Young teams can come up and challenge the best. That's what makes this season so fun to watch. We're seeing all these new stars emerge, and the older guys, they're definitely on notice.
It feels like we're in this new era in the NBA. Things are more even. The gap between the top teams and everyone else, it's shrinking. So that's going to be good for the fans, right? More unpredictable games, more upsets, more excitement.
Yeah, those days of just one or two teams dominating, those seem to be over. There's so much talent now, and teams are finding all these creative ways to compete. We're seeing more three-pointers, more focus on spacing the floor, more versatile defenses.
And the coaching is getting more complex, too. They're using all this data to find mismatches, figure out weaknesses, and come up with strategies that fit their players perfectly.
It's a great time to be a basketball fan. The game's evolving, the competition is fierce, and the storylines are just incredible.
But even with all this talk about balance and things changing, we can't forget about those teams that have always been at the top, like the Warriors and the Clippers.
Right. They might not be as dominant, but they're still forces to be reckoned with. They've got the experience, they know how to win championships, and they've got those star players who can carry them when things get tough.
The Warriors, even though they look shaky against the Thunder, they still have Steph Curry. And as long as he's out there, they've got a chance to win any game.
Curry, he's just different. He can change the whole game by himself. And now with Klay Thompson back, they've got two guys who can just light it up from outside. That's a nightmare for any defense.
And the Clippers, with Leonard and George leading the way, they can score from anywhere. Inside, outside, doesn't matter.
They're well coached. They've got a deep bench. When they're playing their best, they're one of the hardest teams to beat in the league.
So yeah, things are shifting, but the old guard, they're still right there in the mix.
Yeah.
Makes that race for the championship even more interesting.
It's going to be a battle, for sure. A fight to the very end. And the teams that can stay healthy, adjust to how the game is changing, and stay focused, those are the teams that are going to be holding up the trophy at the end.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about a game that maybe didn't get as much attention, but I think it's worth looking at. The Clippers beating the Spurs.
Interesting. What caught your eye about that one?
It wasn't just that the Clippers dominated. It was the difference in styles, like two different eras of basketball clashing. The Clippers, with all their stars and their championship dreams, going up against the Spurs, a team that's rebuilding, trying to figure out who they are now.
I see what you mean. It was like a snapshot of how the NBA is changing. On one side, you got teams built around these superstar duos, all about offense and flashy plays. And on the other side, you got teams like the Spurs focusing on developing their young guys, playing tough defense, and being more of a team.
The Clippers, with their athleticism, their scoring power, and just their drive to win, they were too much for the Spurs.
But even though they lost, the Spurs showed some potential. DeJounte Murray, He's becoming a star, and Keldon Johnson, that guy can score.
They're still figuring things out, but they've got the pieces to be good in the future. And the way they're committed to developing their players, focusing on the fundamentals, that could be a model for other teams that are rebuilding.
It reminds us that there's more than one way to be successful in the NBA. You don't necessarily need two superstars to be competitive. You need a solid foundation, a commitment to developing players, and a clear vision for what you want to build.
All right, we've covered a lot tonight. The Timberwolves upsetting the Suns, the Knicks rising in the East, the Clippers looking dominant, and the Warriors, their future's a little uncertain. But I want to leave you with one last thought.
Hit me.
We've talked a lot about the stars, the game-winning shots, the highlights. But what about those role players, the guys who don't always get the attention, but they make such a big impact on the game?
You're talking about the guys who come off the bench, bring the energy, play tough defense, hit those clutch shots that can win or lose a game.
Exactly. They might not be the flashy guys, but they're the ones doing the dirty work, sacrificing their own stats to help the team win.
They're the glue guys, the unsung heroes, the guys who represent what basketball is really about. They understand it's not about them, it's about the team working together to be the best.
And looking ahead to the rest of the season, it's important to remember it's not all about the big names. It's about the whole team, everyone on the roster contributing.
It's about those teams that can find that chemistry, that connection, that shared goal that helps them overcome any obstacle.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this amazing night of NBA action, let's take a second to appreciate everyone, not just the stars, but everyone who makes this league so special.
To all the players, the coaches, the fans, everyone who contributes to the magic of the NBA, we salute you.
And to you, the listeners, thanks for joining us. We've talked about a lot tonight, from those exciting upsets to all the little things that make teams work.
But the journey's not over. The NBA season is a marathon, not a sprint. And as we go forward, we'll be keeping a close eye on everything, analyzing what's happening, and breaking down those key moments that shape this incredible season.
Until next time, keep watching the games, stay passionate about basketball, and never forget the power of teamwork.
So we were talking about those role players, right? The guys who don't always get the headlines but are so crucial to a team's success.
Yeah, and it's not just what they do on the court, it's those other things they bring. Leadership, hustle, that willingness to do the dirty work. It inspires their teammates.
Exactly. Like Draymond Green on the Warriors. He's not putting up 30 points every night, but his defense, his passing, the way he leads vocally, that's what holds that team together.
He's a perfect example of how a player's impact goes way beyond the stats. He knows his role, and he owns it, does whatever it takes to win.
And sometimes those role players, they become the heroes. Think about Jordan Poole coming off the bench for the Warriors last night.
Yeah.
He gave them that spark when they really needed it.
That's what I love about the NBA. Any given night, a guy who's usually in the background can step up and change the whole game. It reminds you that every player on the roster can make a difference. And the teams that can use everyone's talents, those are the really dangerous teams.
Speaking of dangerous teams, we've talked a lot about how the power might be shifting in the league. But one thing's for sure, if you want to win a championship, you got to go through teams like the Warriors and the Clippers.
They might not be as dominant, but they've got that experience, that championship DNA, you know.
Yeah, the Warriors, they've been there, they've done it, they know how to win under pressure, how to deal with tough times. And Steve Kerr, their coach, he's a master at adjusting to whatever's happening in the game.
And the Clippers, with Leonard and George, they have so much talent, so much depth. Not many teams can match that.
They're built for the playoffs. They've got stars. They play tough defense, and their coaching staff has been there. They can definitely make a run at the title.
So we're seeing new stars come up, but the old guard, they're not going anywhere. Makes that race for the championship even more intense.
It's going to be a battle all the way to the end. And the teams that stay healthy, figure out how to adapt to how the game's changing, and stay focused, those are the teams that are going to be celebrating at the end.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, looked at all the key moments from last night's games. We saw upsets, we saw some incredible individual performances, and we talked about the bigger picture, how things are changing in the league.
And that's what's so great about the NBA. It's a story that's always unfolding, always something new, always another chapter being written.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this. Never underestimate the power of teamwork. The teams that play together, trust each other, and have that shared goal, Those are the teams that achieve greatness.
It's not just about the stars. It's about the role players, the coaches, the fans, everyone. That's what makes the NBA so special, so unpredictable, so much fun to watch.
This has been The Deep Dive, your go-to for everything NBA. We'll be back soon to dig into more stories, more insights, more of those moments that make this league so amazing. Until then, keep watching, keep loving the game, and never forget, it's all about the team.